My name is Linnea Corwin. I am 68 years old. The hostess said my name the way people say something they cannot place. Polite but uncertain, holding the reservation book like a shield. The restaurant shimmered with glass and soft lighting. The kind of place my son and his friends treated like a stage set. I smoothed the front of my dark dress, the same one I had worn to board meetings, to funerals, to quieter victories, and told her I was here for Brianna Corwin's birthday dinner. At my daughter-in-law's name, her smile brightened. At mine, it stayed fixed and formal. She guided me through tables filled with laughter, chatter, and perfume heavy enough to sting. Long before we reached the private room, I heard Connor's voice. He had always been loud. Even as a child afraid of the dark, the room was narrow, elegant, and curated. Brianna sat near the center. Surrounded by friends in tasteful dresses, Connor hovered at her side, laughing at a story one of her co-workers told. He saw me first. A flicker guilt annoyance crossed his face. Gone before I could name it. Mom, you made it. As though I were unpredictable. As though I had not confirmed twice. I said I would. I replied, "Happy birthday, Brianna." She turned, hair glossy under the light. "Oh, Linnea, you did not have to bring anything." Polite words. Rebuke underneath. A server gestured toward a chair at the far end of the table near the exit. Far from my son, no one stood. One of Brianna's friends offered a thin, polite smile. The kind you offer a stranger you hope won't sit beside you. I set my small gift, a hand-dyed scarf, by Brianna's plate. She did not notice. An hour passed in tiny cuts. "You live in Belltown, isn't that area?" "Transitional." "Oh, you're still working." "That's sweet." "Consulting, what kind?" "The kind that ended conversations." "Apparently." Wine poured freely. A deep red older than half the people at the table. I wondered if Connor remembered the nights I counted coins at the kitchen table while he drew dragons with crayons. Dessert arrived, a perfect chocolate creation with thin gold candles. Everyone sang. I added my voice quietly. "Make a wish." Someone said. Brianna closed her eyes, then looked at Connor with expectation, so sharp it felt rehearsed. He stood, lifting his glass. Conversations stilled with practiced ease. He smiled, but not for me. "To Brianna," he said, "to the woman who pushed me to grow and to leave negativity behind." Applause, laughter, my pulse thudded, "and to chosen family." He added, "People who support us, not drag us back with fear or bitterness." A few eyes flicked toward me. He continued, louder, "For too long. I let someone keep me small. I let guilt convince me I owed them everything, even when they gave only criticism in return." My chest tightened. "Mom," he said, finally turning to me, "you have made it clear you don't believe in what we're building. You won't stand with us. You call it boundaries. We call it abandonment." Silence pressed in. "So from now on, we're choosing our real family, the ones who believe in us." His voice did not shake. "You're dead to us. After tonight, do not contact us again." A sharp inhale somewhere. A fork clattering. My hand trembled. I set my glass down before it spilled. No one protested. Brianna stared at her plate, almost smiling. I rose slowly. "All right," I said. "I understand." I took my bag with careful dignity, 3 steps toward the door, and it opened. Marcus stepped in wearing a black suit cut like armor. Moving with a soldier's precision, he scanned the room, then approached. "Ms. Corwin," he said, his voice resonant. "Your helicopter is ready." Conversation died instantly. "Helicopter," someone whispered. "Corwin," as in the Corwin Foundation. The young server who had been kind to me earlier stared, wide-eyed. She's the philanthropist from the news, the one who donated $20 million. Connor's face drained white. I nodded to Marcus. Thank you. I'll be right there, as I walked past the untouched scarf, past the candles, past the people who had dismissed me all evening. I felt every year of my life settle into place. In the hallway, away from their eyes, memory rose like a tide to coma. 2 jobs. A baby asleep on my chest. A woman building quietly in the dark. The elevator doors closed, and I knew the truth. To explain how tonight happened, I had to go back to the beginning. I grew up in a 1-bedroom rental on the east side of Tacoma, the kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear every argument and every apology that followed. My mother worked nights at a cannery. My father drifted in and out, sometimes sober, sometimes not. Most evenings it was just the 2 of us, sitting at a chipped laminate table, counting out the coins she kept in a ceramic mug shaped like a lighthouse. $8.60, she would say, rubbing her forehead as if the number itself hurt. Enough for milk. Not enough for the bus tomorrow. I would push the coins toward her with both hands, trying to make her smile. She never did. Not then. When I was 18, I swore I would never live like that again. But life has a way of making you swallow promises whole. I met Connor's father at 21. He was charming when he wanted to be, reckless when he did not care who he hurt. He left when I was 7 months pregnant. A folded napkin on the table with his attempt at an apology, not ready. It said, "You're stronger than me." I remember staring at that napkin until the ink blurred. Connor was born on a cold morning in March. A nurse handed him to me, and he made a tiny, shocked sound like he could not believe how bright the world was. "It's just us," I whispered into the soft patch of hair on his head. "I will not fail you." And I meant it with a ferocity that scared me. I worked mornings at a bakery and nights washing linens at a motel. There were weeks when the only thing I ate was leftover dough scraps because every dollar went to formula and diapers. I would heat water on the stove to bathe him when the power bill was late again, whispering to him that it was an adventure. One night, when he was 4, I came home from the motel so tired I could barely lift my arms. Connor was sitting cross-legged on the floor with his crayons. He looked up as soon as I opened the door. "Mom," he said softly, "I saved you. The last cookie from school." I sat beside him and ate half of it to make him happy, then tucked the other half into a napkin for the next morning. I must not have hidden it well enough because he found it before bed. "Why are you saving it?" he asked. "So I have something sweet to look forward to," I told him. He pressed the cookie back into my hand. "Then you need the whole thing." He was 4 years old and already trying to keep me from breaking. When he was 6, he woke up crying because he had heard me on the phone begging the electric company for a payment extension. He wrapped his arms around my waist and said, "I will help you when I get big. You help me now." I told him, "More than you know." By the time he was 8, I had moved us into a slightly better apartment, one with carpet that did not smell like mildew and windows that actually locked. I started taking night classes at the community college. I studied while he slept, my textbooks open on the kitchen counter. "You're going to be smart like the people on TV," he said once, watching me highlight a paragraph. "Smarter," I told him. Those years carved something hard and bright inside me, a determination that Connor would never see the kind of hunger that shaped my childhood, never feel the helplessness that clung to every adult I grew up around. But each promise I made to protect him became another secret I kept. And as I worked and saved and clawed my way toward a life beyond survival, I learned to hide more of myself, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of the day he might look at me the way my father looked at my mother. With disappointment heavy enough to crush the room, it was easier to stay quiet, easier to let him believe we were climbing the same hill together. I just never imagined how far I would climb once he stopped looking back. For most of my life, blending in felt easier than being seen. At 68, it had become a habit so deeply woven into me that even the people who lived 2 doors down barely remembered my name. My building in Belltown was old enough to creak when the wind pushed against it. But it was clean, quiet, and anonymous. I liked anonymous. Anonymous kept people from asking questions I did not want to answer. Most mornings, I left the building with a canvas bag over my shoulder and my keys looped around one finger. My car, a faded blue sedan, old enough that mechanics sometimes shook their heads at it, waited in the same spot it always did. The neighbor loading groceries into her SUV gave me a quick nod. "Morning, Ms. Corwin," she said, not looking long enough to notice anything else. "Morning," I replied, slipping into the driver's seat. I wore the kind of clothes that made me forget I was wearing them: plain sweaters, dark jeans, a simple coat in winter. The price of any of those sweaters could have funded a family for a month, but no one would ever guess. That was the point. When I reached the cafe I visited a few times each week, the barista at the counter greeted me with a lazy smile. The usual, "Ms. C. Yes. Thank you," I said, sliding a few crumpled bills across the counter. He thought I paid in cash because I was old-fashioned. The truth was that cash left no digital footprints. That mattered more than it should have. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Not the cheap one I kept visible in my bag, but the thin, high-security device tucked inside my coat. The vibration pattern was one only 3 people used. I stepped outside. Standing beside the newspaper box that had become my makeshift shield from passing crowds. "Linnea," a clipped voice said in my ear, "the encrypted packet from Oslo needs approval before noon. The board wants confirmation. I will review it after 10. I answered quietly. "Understood." The call ended before anyone noticed I had even lifted the phone. A group of college students passed me, laughing, one of them brushing my shoulder without apologizing. I doubted any of them would remember my face 5 minutes later, back inside. The barista slid my drink toward me. "You got plans today?" he asked casually. "Just errands," I said, tucking the phone deeper into my coat. He grinned and moved on to the next customer. If I had told him the truth, that I had to approve a multi-continent data transfer, sign off on 2 research grants totaling more than $3 million, and review staffing changes for an oncology project, he would have thought I was joking. And even if he believed me, it would have changed the way he looked at me. I did not want that. At home, I set my drink on the small kitchen table and woke up the laptop that held no personal photos, no documents with my name, nothing to tie me to the woman whose signature appeared on international contracts. I entered 2 passwords, touched a hidden sensor under the table's edge, and watched the secure server open like a door swinging inward. A soft knock came from the hallway. My neighbor, Mrs. Lane, poked her head in as I opened the door. "I'm baking lemon bars later. I'll leave some by your door." "That's kind of you," I said. She eyed my sweater. "You always dress so simple." "I like that. Real people do. Real people." I smiled and thanked her, closing the door slowly. When I turned back to the waiting screen codes, signatures, messages stacked in tidy columns, I felt something shift inside me. The same old distance, the same split life, the same quiet lie that protected everything I built. In the world outside my door, I was a woman no one bothered to look at twice. And inside this room, I was something else entirely. Corwin Analytics began at a kitchen table that wobbled every time I shifted my weight. Connor was 10 then, all elbows and questions, doing homework beside me while I scribbled through a stack of papers that were supposed to be volunteer work for a clinic downtown. "Why do you do that for free?" he asked one night, tapping the page with his pencil. "You're better at it than the people who get paid." "I am practicing," I told him, and helping. He accepted that. Because children take whatever truth you hand them. He could not know that the clinic relied on outdated systems and incomplete patient data, and that if someone did not fix their algorithm soon, people could be hurt. I created a solution in 6 weeks, hand-coded, ugly, but effective. When I walked it into the clinic director's office, she stared at the screen as if she had been handed a miracle. "Who did this?" she whispered. "I did." She blinked at me, then glanced at the volunteer badge still clipped to my shirt. "Do you want a job here?" "No." I said, "But I can build you something better if you give me time." That was the first contract, $20,000 spread over 3 months. I used half for rent and food. The rest went into software, equipment, and a tiny office I shared with an accountant who snored through afternoon meetings. I told Connor it was part-time consulting. Over the next decade, the work changed shape. Clinics became small hospitals, then regional networks. I learned how to negotiate, how to sit across from men in suits who looked at my thrift store jacket and underestimated me. A director at a research institute in Boston looked at my proposal and said, "You wrote this yourself?" "Yes. We usually hire teams of 40 for systems like this. I work quietly," I said. He signed the contract 2 days later. Growth did not feel glamorous. It felt like exhaustion. I answered late-night calls on the balcony while Connor slept. My laptop balanced on the railing, code scrolling until dawn. Sometimes he would wander out in his pajamas. "You're still up," he murmured, rubbing his eyes. "Just a little longer." He would curl up on the sofa and wait for me to finish, breathing softly. I kept the room dim so I would not wake him. It became our rhythm, him dreaming. Me, building a world he did not know existed. By the time Corwin Analytics reached its 10th anniversary, we had more than 2,000 employees. My name was nowhere on the public filings. A trust owned the majority share, with my silent partner, my attorney. Grace acting as the visible executive. "You understand the consequences." She warned me more than once. "If anything goes wrong, public scrutiny will hit no one but me. And if things go well, the world will never know your name." "That is what I want," I said. "Why?" "Because I want to be a mother first." Grace held my gaze. "You want to protect him?" "Yes." She nodded, as if she understood. But there were parts she did not see: how fame could twist people, how wealth had destroyed every family on my father's side, how I still heard the echo of slammed doors from my childhood. I wanted none of that near Connor. As contracts grew, so did the stakes: patient data systems for cancer trials, predictive models that saved emergency rooms millions of hours, partnerships with universities who wanted tools for early diagnosis. One agreement was worth $200 million across 5 years. I signed it alone in my kitchen, the pen trembling slightly. Still, when Connor asked how work was going, I said, "Busy. Nothing exciting." He told me once, half teasing, "Mom, you're the only person I know who works this hard and still lives like a student." I laughed. "Old habits?" He nodded, but something in his expression shifted: a faint frustration, a flicker of judgment. The divide between our worlds widened by inches. I kept building. I kept silent. I told myself it was the right thing, that there would be a day when I would explain everything. 20 years passed before I realized that silence had its own cost. By the time I saw how deep the distance had grown, it was already set in him an assumption that I had never changed, never climbed, never fought my way into the life he benefited from without knowing it. I had protected him from everything except the consequences of not knowing who his mother truly was. When Connor was small, he used to fall asleep on my shoulder the moment we stepped onto the bus. His head would tilt to the right every time, as if his bones remembered the exact spot where they fit against me. I could carry him for blocks without feeling the weight. That is the kind of strength you grow when no one else is coming to help. He was a gentle child, quiet, observant, always trying to understand the world before stepping into it. When he was 9, he brought home a scraped knee and refused to let me worry. It does not even hurt. He insisted, blinking fast. It is all right to cry. I told him, I do not want you to think I am weak. That startled me. You are 9, I said softly. You are allowed to feel anything you feel, he nodded. But the message had already carved itself into him: be strong for Mom. Do not add to her burdens. Maybe that was where the distance began, even if it took years to show itself. When he started high school, he stretched taller than me in a single summer. His voice dropped, his walk changed, and suddenly he did not cling to my sleeve crossing the street. But at home, he was still mine. Still the boy who slid his homework across the table and asked, "Can you check this part?" One night when he was 15, I found him in the doorway watching me type lines of code. "You work too much," he said. "And you stay up too late," I countered. He grinned a little. "Fair." He sat beside me. "You're going to be something big, Mom. Like the people in documentaries." That made me laugh. I do not think anyone is making a documentary about a tired woman in a sweater. "You should not hide," he said. Serious now. I froze. That was the closest he ever came to asking what I really did. I touched his shoulder and told him he should get to bed. He hesitated, then obeyed. I still remember the look he gave me, half longing, half confusion, as if he sensed a door behind me, but did not know how to open it. College took him away before I was ready. He got into a prestigious business program in Seattle. When we moved his things into the dorm, he hugged me quickly, like someone else might be watching. "I'll call," he promised. I nodded. I know. But calls turned into texts, and texts turned into silence, except on holidays. When he did visit, he spoke fast, full of new names and new expectations. Everyone's so driven. He told me, "You would not believe the internships people are landing. You will get yours." I said, "Mom, I can't show up to interviews looking like..." He stopped, chewing the inside of his cheek. Like me, I finished for him. He closed his eyes. That's not what I meant, but it was exactly what he meant. After graduation, the business world swept him up. He wore crisp shirts and sharp shoes. He talked about networking events and market shifts and people who knew how to present themselves. He talked less about anything that had once mattered to us. I tried reaching across the widening space: dinners, visits, small gifts he barely acknowledged. He would hug me at the door but step back too fast, already thinking of the next meeting, the next impression, the next world he belonged to. The boy I once carried everywhere had learned to walk faster than I could follow. I met Brianna for the first time on a rainy afternoon, the kind where Seattle looks washed thin and cold. Connor had called that morning, sounding brighter than he had in weeks. "I want you to meet someone," he said. "She's important to me." Those words warmed me more than the tea in my hands. When they arrived, Brianna stepped into my condo as if assessing a hotel lobby. She wore a cream coat cinched tightly at the waist, hair curled to look effortless, makeup done with a precision that suggested it never smudged. Her smile was polite, her eyes quick, her judgment careful but present. "This is cozy," she said, running a hand along the back of my couch. "Very. Lived in." Connor stiffened, almost imperceptibly, as if waiting for me to defend myself. "I like it here," I answered. She smiled as though she knew something I did not. "Of course." Over dinner, she told me about her work in brand consulting. "Image matters," she said. "People decide who you are before you finish a sentence." Connor nodded, absorbing her words like scripture. "She's brilliant, Mom." "I'm sure she is," I said. Brianna tilted her head. Connor says you do consulting too. What kind systems work? I replied. Her eyes flicked over my sweater, my worn jeans. That is unexpected. Connor reached for her hand. Mom keeps things simple. The phrase hung there. Simple. A gentle way of saying unimpressive. I let it pass. But something inside me shifted. After that night, Brianna began appearing in more of Connor's stories. Brianna thinks I should dress better for work. Brianna says networking is everything. Brianna thinks I need to make stronger connections. Once, I mentioned a restaurant near my place, Connor said. Brianna prefers places with standards. He did not realize how deeply that cut. Or perhaps he did, and pretended not to. I tried again. I invited them both over for dinner. I cooked Connor's favorite meal, the one I used to make when he had nightmares as a child. When they arrived, Brianna barely stepped inside before wrinkling her nose. I didn't know people still used gas stoves. She murmured. Connor glanced at me, embarrassed. It works fine, I said. She brushed a speck from her sleeve. I'm just sensitive to fumes. Air quality affects skin texture. We ate quietly. Connor kept checking on her, placing his hand on her back, whispering things he thought I could not hear. After dessert, Brianna leaned toward him and spoke just loud enough. It would help your career if you invited colleagues somewhere. Elevated, Connor swallowed. Mom's place is fine. She gave him a soft smile that held no softness at all. You have potential, Connor. But you need to present yourself as someone who belongs at the table. The implication followed the words like a shadow. I was not someone who belonged. When they left, Connor kissed my cheek, distracted and apologetic. She's just trying to help, he said. I know. But I watched him hurry down the hallway with Brianna on his arm, and I knew something had changed. He walked differently beside her. Taller, straighter, as if he had been given new instructions on how to exist. Weeks passed. Connor came by less often. When he did, Brianna was with him, correcting gentle details of my life. You should update your wardrobe, she suggested once. You should repaint this room. You should consider selling this place and moving closer to us. Each statement landed like a thread, tugging Connor farther away. One afternoon, as they prepared to leave, Brianna glanced around my living room and said quietly, Connor has worked very hard to get where he is. He deserves an environment that reflects that. I'm not his environment. I replied, I'm his mother. She smiled. Of course. But her eyes told a different truth, the one she was already teaching him. Slowly and skillfully, I watched them walk out the door, Connor adjusting his collar the way she liked, and felt the air settle in the quiet they left behind. Brianna had entered his life gently, gracefully, and already she had begun rearranging the ground beneath my son's feet. The first time they asked me for money, it arrived wrapped in the language of opportunity. Connor and Brianna invited me to brunch at a polished cafe near their new apartment, white walls. Curated plants, waitstaff who pronounced menu items like they were doing me a favor. Connor barely waited for the coffee to arrive before leaning forward. We've been thinking about starting something together, he said. A boutique marketing firm. Brianna placed her hand on his wrist. We already have clients ready. We just need initial capital to get off the ground. I nodded slowly. How much are you talking about? Connor exchanged a glance with her. $100,000 would cover everything. There was no hesitation in his voice. No build-up, just the number, dropped between us like a stone. I folded my napkin. That's a lot. It's an investment, Brianna said brightly. Not a gift, Connor added. You've always encouraged me to dream big. This is that. I looked at him, his eager face. The same one he had when he was 5 and wanted a bicycle we could not afford. Except now he was 30. And the price tag had grown with him. I can help, I said carefully, but not that much. Their expressions tightened at the same time, like a pair of matching masks. Brianna asked, "What number feels right to you?" $20,000. I said. As a start, Connor leaned back, disappointed, but trying not to show it. Brianna did not try to hide hers. "Well," she said, stirring her coffee, "it is something. I want you two to succeed." I told them, "But I want you to build something strong, not dependent on me." Connor forced a smile. "We appreciate anything, Mom." Really, but the warmth from before had cooled. They took the $20,000. They started the business. For a while, things seemed stable. When I asked how it was going, Brianna always gave smooth answers. "Everything is on track. We're scaling. We're networking." Connor echoed her, but with less conviction. A few months later, they invited me over again. I brought muffins. Brianna took the box without opening it. "We're thinking of moving," she said as she sat. "This apartment is not ideal for a growing firm," Connor added. "There's a place we love bigger, better location. Great for hosting clients." I waited. "It's just out of reach," he continued. "Unless we get a little help." There it was. Ask number 2. No shame, no build-up. How much I asked. He hesitated this time. $80,000. Just to close the gap, I exhaled slowly. "Connor, I cannot do that." Brianna's smile vanished completely. "You helped before, and I am glad I did." I said, "But I will not fund everything. It is important you two stand on your own feet." Connor's shoulders tensed. "We are trying." "I know." I said quietly, "That's why I'm saying no. You need to learn these steps. The hard ones." Brianna crossed her legs, expression sharp. "It must be nice to decide what's important when you don't understand the pressure we're under." Connor shot her a warning glance, but she did not look away. I stood. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting limits." He did not follow me to the door. He just stayed there, jaw tight, hands clasped together, as if choosing whether to be angry or ashamed. "Mom," he finally said as I reached the hall, "we really counted on you." "I know," I whispered. "But counting on me and leaning on me are not the same." Brianna closed the door behind me. The click felt sharper than it should have. It was the first moment I realized the ground between us was starting to crack quietly, but unmistakably, the silence did not arrive all at once. It stretched itself across weeks, then months, settling between us like fog that never burned off. At first, Connor still called brief, distracted conversations about work. Updates rushed between meetings. Brianna's voice was always somewhere in the background, reminding him of a deadline, a reservation, a task left undone. Then the calls turned into short texts. "Busy today? Mom, we'll call later. Maybe next week." Next week never came. I tried to keep the door open. I sent photos of the neighborhood farmer's market, a picture of a book he used to love as a child, a message on a rainy Sunday soup on the stove if you want to stop by. Hours passed. Days. He finally replied with an emoji. One day, I posted a photo of the lemon bars my neighbor had left outside my door. A simple picture. No faces. Nothing personal. When I went back to check if Connor had seen it, Brianna's name was gone from my followers. A small thing. A modern kind of erasure. But it landed with the weight of something heavier. When I mentioned it to Connor, he said, "She probably just deleted old accounts. She still posts." I said. He sighed. "Mom, you're reading into things." I let the matter rest, though something in his tone told me he wanted it to rest so he would not have to carry it. Invitations dwindled too. The gatherings I used to attend, the barbecues, the small birthday dinners. The housewarming parties went on without my name on the group text. When I asked how events had gone, Connor would speak vaguely. Oh, it was just a few people. Nothing big. You would not have liked it. Sometimes he forgot to hide the photos that appeared on his social media photos full of people, full of noise, full of Brianna at the center, smiling. My absence in those pictures was loud enough to drown everything else out. Months passed like that. A thinning connection. Small threads snapping one at a time. Still, I kept reaching for him. He kept stepping back. So when an invitation arrived, hand-delivered, printed on thick ivory paper, I stared at it for a long time. Please join us for an intimate dinner celebrating Brianna's birthday. South Lake Union, 8 o'clock. Formal attire. We would be honored by your presence. Honored, I murmured aloud, as if the word itself needed examination. An odd choice. Considering how little they had spoken to me in the past half year, I called Connor immediately. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom. I got the invitation. I said, oh, good. Brianna worked hard on those. Are you sure you want me there? There was a pause. Thin and careful. Of course, he said finally. It's important to her. Important to her, not to him, not to us. Still, I said, all right, I'll come. Great, he said, already distracted. Wear something nice. The restaurant is, well, you'll see. Well, after we hung up, I sat with the card in my lap, my fingers tracing the embossed gold lettering. The details were extravagant, unnecessary, the kind of invitation meant to impress guests, not welcome family. The next morning, Brianna sent a single text. Looking forward to seeing you. Please arrive on time. This evening matters to us. The phrasing made my chest ache a little. Not matters because we miss you. Not we want you there, just that it mattered. As I folded the invitation back into its envelope, I felt something settle quietly inside me. A small unease. A tug in my ribs as if something was being arranged without me, around me, perhaps even at my expense. Still, I chose my dress, the same dark one that had been with me through too many chapters of my life, and laid it across the bed. Their silence had felt like a door slowly closing. This invitation felt like someone opening it again, but not for the reasons I hoped. The restaurant at South Lake Union glowed the way expensive places do, soft lighting, polished glass, the quiet hum of people who believed they belonged there. A young hostess guided me through the room, her hand hovering near my back but never touching. Your party is already seated, Ms. Corwin. Already seated, already complete. When we reached the private dining area, I recognized the tone before the voices, the bright, curated laughter people use when they want to be heard by strangers. Connor saw me first. He stood halfway, not fully, as if unsure whether the effort was worth it. Mom, you made it. I gave him a small smile. Of course you. Brianna turned in her chair, her dress shimmering gold under the lights. Linnea, she said, sounding as though she were greeting a distant relative she barely remembered. You look comfortable. Thank you, I replied, even though it was not a compliment. The server pulled out a chair for me at the far end of the table. So distant, I could not have touched Connor's sleeve even if I reached across the plates. I sat quietly, smoothing my napkin. Everyone, Brianna announced with a flourish that felt rehearsed. This is Connor's mother, not my mother-in-law, not Linnea, just a label, held at arm's length, a few nods, one polite smile, mostly glances that moved over me the way water glides over stone briefly. Without intention, Connor cleared his throat. Mom, you remember Jake and Kelsey from the firm? I nodded. Yes, Jake gave a tight smile. Good to see you again. His eyes flicked to my sweater, then away. The server arrived with wine deep red. fragrant. The kind I rarely drank. For Mrs. Corwin, he asked gently. I shook my head. Just water, Jake chuckled. Smart. Keep that fixed income steady. Right, Kelsey laughed. My parents complain about the same thing. They say restaurants like this wipe out half their monthly budget. My throat tightened. I kept my eyes on the tablecloth. Water is fine. Only the server paused, as if noticing something no one else bothered to see. I'll bring sparkling, ma'am, on the house. His kindness hit harder than the comment. I placed the small gift I had wrapped pale blue paper, a silk ribbon, beside Brianna's plate. For you, I said softly. I said. She touched it with her fingertips, then slid it behind her wine glass. Thank you. I'll open it later. She said later the same way people say never. Conversations spun around me like a carousel I could not climb onto. They talked about condo upgrades, investment groups, a yacht one couple had chartered for summer. Someone described a trip to London, staying near Kensington Palace. Connor laughed loudly at something Jake said, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. At one point, Brianna tilted her head toward her friends. Connor has been working so hard. We're finally moving into the lifestyle we've been aiming for. Jake raised his glass. Cheers to leveling up. Another laughed. It must be nice having parents who don't mind living small so you can live big. My breath caught. No one corrected him. I stayed quiet, folding and unfolding the corner of my napkin beneath the table. A server approached again young, with dark curls tucked behind his ear. Ma'am, are you comfortable? He asked quietly. Yes, I whispered. He studied my face for a second, then said, if you need anything at all, please signal me. He said it gently, the way someone speaks to a person standing alone at a party. The meal blurred into courses I barely tasted. When dessert arrived, a towering confection with golden candles, everyone sang. I sang too, softly, though my voice trembled. Brianna blew out the candles, then turned to Connor. Say something, she urged. His chair scraped back. He stood, glass in hand, smiling toward the center of the table, but not toward me. I sat at the very edge of their perfect circle, close enough to hear every word, but far enough to be forgotten. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the chatter, it all washed past me like I was outside looking through frosted glass. As Connor lifted his glass higher, preparing to speak, I folded my hands in my lap and braced myself. The night had already carved small wounds into me. I could feel another one coming. Connor tapped his spoon gently against his glass, the sharp chime slicing through the chatter. The table fell quiet at once. Even the servers paused mid-step. He smiled broadly, turning toward Brianna first. To the woman who has made me better, he said, who's taught me to look forward, not backward. The group murmured approval. Brianna glowed. But then he shifted slightly, just enough that the tail of his gaze swept across me, cold and quick, like a blade testing where to cut. And to the people in our lives, he continued, who support our growth instead of holding us back. I felt the words before they fully formed an old instinct. The way you sense a storm by the taste of the air. He lifted his glass higher. Tonight's about gratitude, about the future, about cutting out negativity. His voice sharpened at that last word. A few chairs shifted. Several eyes flicked in my direction and then away. Pretending not to look, Brianna leaned forward, chin lifted. Say it, she murmured, not quietly enough. Connor's shoulders straightened. For months now, he said, I've tried to bring someone along with me, someone who should want the best for us, someone who should celebrate our wins. My hands folded tighter in my lap. But instead, he went on, this person questioned every decision, refused to help when we needed it, made me feel guilty for wanting more. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. Jake nodded sympathetically. Kelsey whispered, some parents don't understand ambition. Connor continued, louder now. We worked so hard to build our business, to upgrade our life. We asked for support, not charity, support. And we were met with excuses. I never made excuses. I managed. Voice barely above a whisper. Connor's eyes snapped toward me. You refused to sign the documents. The table went still. I felt every eye settle on me. I said I needed time to review them. I said they were harmless. He insisted. A simple financial guarantee so we could secure the lease. Everyone does it. Brianna's parents would have done it. Brianna crossed her arms, triumphant. My family stands by us. Some people do not. I was protecting you, I said gently, protecting me. Connor laughed. Short and bitter. From what success no? From risk you didn't understand. He shook his head slowly, as if he could not believe the words he was hearing. See, you always think you know better. You undermine everything we do. I wanted you to build something solid, I said. And you wanted, he interrupted, to hold on to every penny you have while pretending you're some kind of struggling retiree. Heat rushed to my face. Conversations from other tables dimmed under the weight of mine. This person, Connor said, turning back to the group, has brought negativity into our relationship again and again. She questions Brianna's choices. She refuses to show up unless it's on her terms. She would rather stay small and drag us with her. I never dragged you, I whispered. He didn't hear me, or didn't want to. We've tried. He insisted. We really have. But we're done letting guilt dictate our future. Brianna nodded, lips pressed into a line of hard satisfaction. So tonight, Connor said, raising his glass one final time, we are choosing our real family. The people who support us, the people who believe in us, and we are cutting ties with those who don't. He looked directly at me now. No hesitation, no shame, only resolve. You're dead to us, he said. A single breath escaped someone at the table. Shock, pity, or delight. I couldn't tell. My vision blurred at the edges. But I did not look down. I kept my eyes on my son, the boy I had carried through rainstorms, the boy I had fed when I went hungry, the boy I had sacrificed 2 decades of sleep and safety for. He stared back as if I were a stranger interrupting his evening. Someone dropped a fork. Brianna blinked slowly, satisfied. Connor drained his glass. I felt the moment something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like old porcelain giving way under too much pressure. The server with the dark curls approached me carefully. Ma'am, do you need a moment? I shook my head. No, I think the moment has already passed. I rose from my seat. My napkin slipped from my lap and fell to the floor, but no one bent to pick it up. I reached the doorway before my legs trembled. Behind me, Connor said nothing. Ahead of me, the hallway was silent. And somewhere in that silence, I felt the last pieces of something important drift to the ground, too quiet for anyone but me to hear. I steadied myself against the chair, the room tilting just slightly as I tried to breathe past the words Connor had thrown at me. I meant to walk out quietly, without looking back. I wanted the dignity of silence. But before I could take a full step, the door to the private room swung open. Marcus filled the doorway in his black suit, broad-shouldered, composed. Every movement controlled. His eyes swept the table, assessing, before landing on me. Miss Corwin, he said, his voice calm and resonant. Your helicopter is ready. We can depart whenever you choose. The room froze. Forks hung mid-air. Brianna's lipstick, glossed smile, faltered. Connor turned slowly, confusion tightening his features. Marcus stepped forward, nodding to me with familiar respect. Traffic is building along the waterfront, he added. Your pilot recommends leaving within the next 15 minutes. A whisper broke the stunned silence. Did he say helicopter? One of Brianna's friends murmured. The young server with the dark curls, the only person who had shown me kindness that evening, stared at me as recognition dawned in his eyes. That's her, he breathed. The donor from the pediatric research headlines last winter. The one who gave $20 million. His voice shook. She's the billionaire from the news. Connor blinked. As if the words were in a language he didn't understand, Brianna recovered first. Mom, she said, stretching the word thin. You know him, Marcus answered before I could. I have been Ms. Corwin's head of security for 9 years. His gaze flicked across the table, measured. Sharp. She prefers to travel discreetly. The chatter around the table rose in small bursts, shock, disbelief, sudden recalculations. Jake stammered. So, you're not retired, Kelsey whispered. Corwin, like Corwin Analytics. I lifted my purse from the back of the chair. My hands no longer trembled. Marcus held out an arm for me to walk beside him. Your car is waiting to take us to the helipad, he said. Shall we? Yes, Marcus, I replied. As I moved toward the door, the room's perception shifted tangibly. The same faces that had dismissed me an hour earlier now stared with open, startled hunger. Chairs scraped. Someone said my name with sudden sweetness. Linnea. Wait, I did not. At the threshold, I paused only long enough to thank the server who had brought me sparkling water. Have a good night, I told him. You too, ma'am, he whispered, eyes wide with respect rather than pity. I walked out with Marcus at my side. Behind me, their voices tumbled over one another's shock, regret, urgent whispers trying to rewrite the last hour. But the door closed, soft and final, before any of them reached me. Marcus walked beside me through the quiet hallway, his stride steady, mine careful. The restaurant noise dimmed behind us, replaced by the faint hum of the city outside. He opened the side door to the street, shielding me from the curious stares of diners who had already begun whispering. The car is waiting. Miss Corwin, he said. I nodded. My voice felt tucked somewhere deep, unreachable. I slid into the back seat of the black sedan, Marcus taking the front. The driver pulled away smoothly, weaving through South Lake Union traffic toward the rooftop where the helicopter waited. Only when the car doors shut did the silence settle. Not peaceful, not heavy, just hollow. Marcus glanced back. Are you all right? I'm upright, I said. He accepted that. He had learned long ago I did not break where others expected. Still, my hands tightened against my coat. The tremor surprised me. Not from shock, no. I had known this moment was coming for years. The distance, the disapproval, the slow replacement of love with performance. But knowing did nothing to soften the cut. By the time we reached the rooftop, the helicopter rotors were already spinning, slicing the night air in rhythmic waves. The pilot gave a brief nod as Marcus guided me forward. The wind pushed against my dress, tugging at the loose ends of my hair. Take your time, Marcus said. I stepped inside, buckled in, and felt the door seal shut behind me, a clean, final sound. The city fell away as we lifted, the lights stretching in long lines across the dark water. From above, Seattle looked almost gentle, almost kind. You could not see the table where my son had buried me with a smile. You could not hear the applause under their breath. Marcus spoke through the headset. Estimated flight time is 18 minutes. Thank you, I answered, though I barely heard myself. The higher we rose, the smaller everything became. The restaurant, the room, their faces, the words that landed like stones. You're dead to us. It replayed with an accuracy that made my chest ache. He had meant it. That was the part that stung like fire under the ribs. He had meant it. I rested my forehead lightly against the cool window. My reflection stared back the woman they thought was small, ordinary, disposable. The woman who built something vast and chose to live quietly within it. A single tear slipped down my cheek. Not for the insult, not for the spectacle, for the boy who used to reach for my hand in crowded rooms, for the man who now turned his back when I moved toward him. Below, the city pulsed with 1,000 warm lights. None of them felt like home. As the helicopter angled east toward the estate, I let the grief settle beside me. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady and real. A grief for a family still alive, still laughing, still clinking glasses over dessert. A grief for people who had stood at my metaphorical burial and clapped. Chapter 13, The Island Home. They never asked about. The helicopter dipped toward the trees as Bainbridge Island rose beneath us. Dark pines. Long, winding roads. The quiet shape of the estate most people assumed belonged to some tech dynasty. In a way, it did. Just not the dynasty my son had ever imagined. We landed on the private pad beside the greenhouse dome. The blades slowed. The wind settled, and Marcus opened the door, offering a steady hand. "Welcome home, Ms. Corwin." Home. A word that felt both comforting and sharp tonight. I stepped onto the concrete pad, breathing in the crisp, salt-tinged air. The estate stretched in soft shadows, 47 acres of forest, labs, trails, and the main house that glowed with warm light. My staff must have seen the helicopter coming. Silhouettes moved behind the windows. Grace met me at the door. She was in a simple sweater, hair pulled back, glasses perched at the edge of her nose, the same way she looked when signing deals worth more than $200 million. "You're back early," she said. "Everything all right, I'm home earlier," I replied. "That's all." Grace studied my face for a beat, then stepped aside without pressing further. That was why she'd been with me for so many years. She knew when questions hurt more than silence. Inside, the house was alive with quiet purpose. A research coordinator hurried through the hallway with a folder under his arm. 2 assistants were sorting through scholarship applications for the foundation's next round of awards. Every room felt like motion people working toward something larger than themselves. I hung my coat and walked toward my study. Stacks of proposals waited on my desk. Renewable energy pilot programs, global health grants, reports on the pediatric oncology project I'd funded last year, diagrams for the research wing expansion lay rolled neatly beside them. There were thank you cards from students whose names my family had never heard students given second chances, because I remembered too vividly what hunger felt like. None of it had ever interested Connor. He had walked through life certain he understood me, his quiet, unambitious mother in Belltown. Never once had he asked where I disappeared to on weekends. Never once had he asked why I sometimes returned home exhausted after meetings he assumed were volunteer shifts. Never once had he asked who I really was. Marcus entered the study quietly. "Security team is in place. The mainland phones have started calling." "Of course they have." I sank into my chair. "They always call when they want something." He nodded slightly. "Do you want me to handle the first wave?" "Yes," I said. "Tonight. I'm done explaining myself." He left with a respectful bow of his head. I looked around the room, the maps, the grants, the future being built plank by plank, and felt a dull ache settle in my chest. Not regret, not pride, something quieter. They never asked. And I never forced the truth on people who had no interest in hearing it. The screensaver on my monitor glowed softly, illuminating the edges of my desk. I touched the frame of an old photo Connor at 10, beaming up at me, unaware of the world I was already building for him. I turned off the light and let the room fall still. Tonight, explanations belonged to no one but me. By morning, the quiet of the island was gone. My phone buzzed nonstop alerts, voicemails, messages stacked in long columns. Grace entered my study with her tablet held tightly. "It's everywhere," she said. "Every outlet in Seattle, some national." She handed me the screen. Local philanthropist publicly disowned by her son at South Lake Union restaurant witnesses. Describe: cold, calculated humiliation. Corwin Foundation declines. Comment: I scrolled once, slowly. There were statements from diners who had recorded portions of the night, blurred videos of Connor's speech, photos of Marcus opening the restaurant door. Grace watched me carefully. Their names are trending. Of course they were. By noon, the headlines had shifted again. Young entrepreneur faces backlash after calling his mother dead to us. Brianna Corwin's clients distance themselves after viral video sponsors withdraw from couple's marketing firm. The phone rang. Marcus answered, then covered the receiver. "The Times wants your comment. They're asking if you intend to press charges for public defamation." "No," I said. He nodded, relaying the message. When he hung up, he added, "Reporters are requesting statements from Connor and Brianna. They're not responding. Let them breathe," I said softly. Grace hesitated. "You don't owe them protection." "I'm not protecting them," I replied. "I'm protecting the truth from becoming a weapon." She exhaled. "People are angry on your behalf." "I know." But anger was useless. It could not rewind a single word from the night before. The phone buzzed again, another request for comment. Then another. Marcus silenced it. "Do you want me to release a statement for you?" he asked. I looked out the window toward the tree line, where the island held its breath. "Yes," I finally said. "Tell them I won't be speaking against my son in the press." Grace touched my arm gently. "They are the ones who hurt you." "I know," I said again, quieter. "But I won't let the world tear him apart for it." The words settled between us, heavy and certain. Sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is choose mercy over truth. Connor arrived before noon. Marcus informed me through the intercom, his voice steady but edged with warning. "He's alone," Marcus said, shaken. "Let him in," I replied. From my study window, I watched the black sedan stop at the gate. Connor stepped out slowly, looking up at the house as if it had materialized out of nowhere. He walked through the open gate with hesitating steps, his eyes tracing the long drive, the greenhouse dome, the research wing's glass corridor. By the time he reached the front steps, his breathing had changed shallow, almost disbelieving. I opened the door before he could knock. "Mom," he said, his voice cracked on the second letter. "Come in." I told him. He stepped inside, turning in a slow circle as if the air itself felt foreign. He stared at the framed photographs on the wall. World leaders, surgeons, researchers, students holding scholarship certificates, photos he had never seen, lives he never asked about. "You live here," he whispered. "Yes." "For how long years?" He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" I held his gaze. "You never asked." The words knocked something loose in him. He flinched, then pulled himself together. "Mom, last night I lifted a hand. Say what you came to say." "I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "About this, about any of it." I breathed slowly. "You didn't want to know. That's not fair." "It is," I answered gently. "You built a picture of me that required no curiosity, no listening, no questions." He ran both hands through his hair. "I was under so much pressure. Mom, Brianna's firm, her expectations. Everyone around us kept saying I needed to elevate myself, be more polished, more ambitious. His voice wavered. I didn't want to look small. And you thought I made you look small, I said. He closed his eyes. Sometimes, yes, I felt the ache, but it was an old ache. Familiar. Connor, I protected you since the moment you were placed in my arms. I worked nights, skipped meals, hid fear you never saw. I built something enormous so your life would never look like mine did. And somewhere along the way, that protection turned into silence. Silence you interpreted as failure. He stared at me. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Because the truth didn't change who you had already decided I was. He sat heavily on the couch. Mom, when I said those things last night, it wasn't just anger. It was shame. I was ashamed of myself, and I took it out on you. I joined him. Not close, just near enough that he knew the door was not completely shut. Connor, you hurt me, I said quietly, not because of the words, but because you meant them. His eyes filled. I did. And I hate myself for it. We sat in the long silence that followed, the house hum faint in the background. Can you forgive me? He asked. His voice trembled, not demanding, not entitled. Just human. I don't know yet, I answered truthfully. But I can start by hearing you, and you can start by seeing me. He nodded, tears slipping down his face. I want to, for your sake, I said. Not just mine. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, shoulders shaking. I placed a hand near his, close enough to reach, far enough to let him choose. He didn't take it, but he didn't pull away either. Some wounds bled quietly. Some were stitched slowly. Some never closed clean. Connor looked up at me, raw and young again. Mom, I'm so sorry. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself believe he meant it. Connor sat with his elbows on his knees, shoulders slumped, eyes red. The boy he once was flickered through him, frightened, hopeful, unraveling. But the man he had become was there too. The one who had stood at a crowded restaurant and buried me with an audience. Mom, he said softly, I want to fix this. I folded my hands in my lap. Then we need terms. He blinked. Terms. Yes. I said. Clear ones. Without them, we'll go right back to where we were. He nodded slowly, bracing himself. First, I said, no more pretending. You and I meet a therapist together, not to assign blame, to understand what we built and what broke. He swallowed. I'll do it. Second, I continued. No financial requests. Not for your business, not for your lifestyle, not for anything. If you come to my home, it will not be to ask for money. His face flushed with shame, but he met my eyes. I agree. Third, I said, there will be honesty. If you are embarrassed by me, you say it. If you are proud, you say it. If you don't know how to feel, you tell me that too. Silence is what ruined us. He nodded again, voice hoarse. I can do that. I hesitated before the fourth term, and Brianna will have to meet me halfway, at her name. His jaw tightened, not with anger, but with dread. I know. He whispered, she won't like this. I don't need her to like it, I replied. But if we're rebuilding, she will not undermine me. Not with comments, not with pressure, not with rewriting history. He exhaled shakily. I'll talk to her. I studied his face. Connor, this isn't a punishment, this is protection. For both of us. He nodded, eyes shining again. I want us back, Mom. I really do. I reached out, placing my hand over his. He didn't pull away this time. Then we begin slowly, I said. Step by step, respect first. Trust later. He squeezed my hand as if anchoring himself, whatever it takes. I'm here. The weight between us shifted, not gone. Not healed, but no longer crushing. We had not rebuilt trust, not yet. But the foundation was no longer broken. It was bare, waiting, and real. 3 months later, the ballroom at Seattle Children's Hospital buzzed with soft conversation and clinking glasses. I stood near the wings of the stage, watching donors file in. Staff members offered warm smiles. Nodding respectfully, they knew my name here. They always had, but tonight was different. Connor stood at the podium, fingers gripping the edges just tightly enough for me to see the nerves he tried to hide. His suit was slightly rumpled. The way it always was when he'd rehearsed something too many times. He cleared his throat. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Tonight is about honoring the people who make this hospital's work possible, people who show up quietly, consistently, even when no one notices." He looked toward me. "Before we continue," he said, voice steadying, "I want to introduce someone, not just to all of you, but to myself, properly." A soft ripple moved through the crowd. "This woman," he continued, "spent decades building opportunities that she refused to take credit for. She funded research, created scholarships, and helped families she never met." He exhaled, and I spent years not seeing any of it. Not seeing her. My breath caught. Connor stepped aside from the microphone and gestured toward me. "Please welcome my mother, Linnea Corwin, the mind and heart behind the Corwin Foundation." For a moment, the room blurred. Not from nerves, those were familiar, but from something deeper. Something that tugged hard inside my chest. I walked onto the stage. The applause rose not polite, not surprised, but warm, genuine. Connor leaned in, his voice low. "Mom, I'm proud of you." The words landed like light. I rested a hand briefly on his arm, then turned to the microphone. "Thank you," I said, my voice held steady. Stronger than it had felt in years. "It means something to be seen, fully." Connor nodded beside me, almost reverently, and for the first time, I felt both parts of myself, mother and woman, standing together in the same light, in claiming my worth. I understood something new. The future was mine to choose, not to hide.